everybody. So, as Felix has said, I'm Ali Sansom. Happy to take questions as we go, but also happy if you've got questions after the event, you can always send things through, and I'm sure Felix will get back to me. So, today's session then, really what we're looking at is understanding what coaching is, the principles of effective coaching. I think you might have done something about what coaching is, so I won't go into a lot of detail on that. Getting the most out of a coaching opportunity, receiving feedback and thinking about goals, and then hopefully at the end we've got a chance for any questions. But I will pause kind of at the end of each session and just see if anybody's got any questions. But as I said, please feel free to chime in if you've got a comment or question, because as you will see across the bottom where I've talked about session behaviours, confidentiality, respect, sensitivity, hopefully you sort of get used to those are the normal things that you would see in a session of this kind. If anybody wants to talk about a particular example of something, then they can do so, and it's all confidential. But engagement is there, and that's really your engagement with me and with the session. So please do feel free to engage. So what is coaching and what isn't coaching? So you'll be aware that there are many types and definitions of coaching, from life coach, executive coach, vocal coach, sports coach, personal coach, as in this. So leadership coach, you can be a coach for pretty much any aspect of life. But in this context, we're focusing very much on leadership, and it very much is a partnership between the coach and the coachee. I don't really like the word coachee, so the people being coached, but I think it's perhaps a bit of an Americanism, but a positively focused way to explore opportunities and a process that helps you as the person being coached to create solutions that are right for you and that will bring about the development that you're seeking. So a sustained change or development of a skill. And it's not a way of getting somebody to tell you what to do, or a way of getting somebody to tell you how to do the core of your degree, because you've got the university for that. And it's very much developmental rather than telling. So just bear in mind, and then at the end it says that it's not a quick fix. It's over a period of 3 sessions. A quick fix usually isn't effective, but coaching is more of a journey, and you start it and you can carry on after the program by getting help from other places. Hopefully, as you go through the program, you'll understand how to ask for help when you think you need it and where you might be able to draw that from. Just to bear in mind, I don't think you've got your coaches yet, and they are generally matched by Felix and the team to your area or your local area or your study area. But it doesn't need to be an expert in your field of work, because they aren't there to tell you what to do. They're there to share their experience of leadership, of life, to help you to develop. So how can being coached help you? It gives you a safe space to grow and to try new things. So it's an opportunity to explore your own thinking and to give you support in trying any new approaches. It also offers you one-to-one support. So that's your coach. There should be your session would be focused on you, and that will help you to both identify and achieve goals, but to encourage you through that work and also to give you honest, constructive feedback, so from an external perspective. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So developing new skills, and especially in the leadership, in terms of your leadership potential, And it does that by helping you to recognize your current strengths and preferences, helping you to learn new skills and extend your capability. And I'll come back to what I mean by that. And helping you to develop greater self-confidence and independence. Okay. So just before I go into the principles of effective coaching, just check everyone's with me so far. Good. Okay. So the principles of an effective coaching relationship really are that it's focused and supportive. So it's very much focused on the person being coached. It's about the needs of that person and not the needs of the coach. As we'll come on to in a minute, it's therefore important that you can articulate those needs from your point of view. It's confidential. Anything discussed between you and your coach is between you and your coach. So it's just for you, and it can cover what you want it to cover. Trust-based. So trust is really important in this. If you're going to talk about confidential things, clearly you need to feel quite safe. So a safe space. So it's trust-based. Coach will be trying to develop that, but also you have a role in developing that trust by engaging with your coach. The more that you are open in that session, and the more the coach is open, the quicker you will develop trust. And bear in mind that you're looking at 3 sessions over a period of several months. Trying to build that relationship quickly will give you the best opportunity to get as much as you can out of the sessions. Honest. So it's important that you are honest and open in your communication. So there isn't a right answer. So it's not about trying to say what you think the coach wants you to say. It's about being able to talk openly about how you feel about things and how you think about things and where you might want to change that. And if there isn't open communication, then it probably means you're not going to have the best discussion. You're going to talk about whatever you put out there. And if that's not the real issue, then you wouldn't be addressing the real issue. So that's why it's really important to be as honest as you feel comfortable being, as honest as possible in that. And it's non-judgmental. So the coach isn't there to form an opinion of you. And the coach isn't there to assess anything to do with your course or your qualification. The coach is there to try and understand what you would like to change and to help you understand how that might best be achieved. So it's really important in this to be present, which always sounds strange because clearly you're there if you're in the discussion, but it really means about giving it your full attention and trying not to be distracted by other things. And what that means is if you turn up to a session and you've got something that you are really worried about and it is in your mind, then it's probably as well to try and cover that in your session so that you can then put it to one side before you move on to whatever you had planned to do in that. So if something's troubling you, then have a discussion about it with your coach. And, you know, your coach can say, maybe we need to come back to that in another session, or maybe we'll cover something on that today, or perhaps just say, right, we understand there's an issue, can we just put it to one side? Okay. And it should be questioning. So this is your coach questioning you and you questioning yourself. And so this isn't about questioning you to get you to justify anything. It's about understanding. So it is about delving into what's behind perhaps some of the views that you might have or some of what you might say. So just to be aware that sometimes it can feel uncomfortable because it's more questioning than your average conversation. And you might not know the answer to some of the questions posed yourself. Yet you might not have ordered your thinking in such a way that you can clearly express that. But this is about you exploring it as much as the coach, so that you understand what's driving you, why you respond a certain way, why something worries you. Is sort of getting behind what's on the surface to help you to work out whether or not you want to change it, and if you do, how you might go about that. So just so that you understand, it's not meant to make you feel uncomfortable, but sometimes it can do. So all coaching approaches work in a similar way. There's a sort of a cycle, they're iterative. So generally you start by having, call it a goal, but it's just an area you want to work on. So there's an area that you've decided you'd like to develop, or you want to change something. So that's the topic, if you like. And then from that aim, where you're trying to get to, the coach will have a discussion with you about where do you think you are? Where do you think you are now? So how far from that aim are you? And what might that journey look like? And from that discussion, then it's about, and given that you're at A and you want to get to B, what are your options for making that change? And so that's a discussion with you about what you think you might be willing to try, what you think might work for you, because it's not one size fits all. And what one person chooses to do might work for them, but it wouldn't necessarily work for everybody. And then you might also in that look at what might get in your way, what might the barriers be, and how might you address those. And then you would reach the point where you decide which of the things that you've talked about you think you would like to try and you would like to do. And that's the point at which you're committing to an action, to try something new. Okay. And they all work that way. This one happens to be called grow, which is why the words are used there. You might have come across it in your other learning. But nearly all models operate in that cyclical way. There's where you want to get to, there's where you are now, there's how you might get there, there's what you're actually going to do. That's the framework within which it works. So how can you make the most out of your coaching sessions? So the first thing really that's important is that you are proactive. So there is a senior person giving you their time in order to help your development. So it's really important that you make the most of that opportunity. So it would be good to start thinking about your goals now, if you haven't done so already, and to sort of have in mind before you go into your session the kind of areas you think you might want to look at and you might want the coach's help to work on. And for each session, you need to prepare in advance. So what's likely to happen after the first session is that you'll agree what you're going to look at in the following session, so you know what to think about in between. But also what's likely is that if you've gone away and tried anything, so if you've committed to trying something new, you've gone away and had a go at that, when you come back to it in the next session, you're probably going to reflect on that. So there's both preparing in advance for a session, and then there's reflecting on the discussion after you've had that session. So how did you feel? Do you think you were as open as you might have been? Do you think you were as honest as you might have been? Were you honest with yourself? And would you do it differently if you did it next time? Because it's very much a learning process. So you're always asking, what can I learn from that? Be open and have courage to try new things. Try and be comfortable with discomfort, if I can say that. So we're all happier in our comfort zone, but sometimes in order to learn a new skill, we have to try new things. And that might mean that it might not work the first time that we try it. So you have to be comfortable with the idea that Everything might not go swimmingly first time. But just to say that there is often more learning in something not working as it should than there is in something that comes together. I mean, it's all nice when it all comes together, but there's often more learning in things that don't quite come together. So just be comfortable being outside your comfort zone. And be willing to take responsibility. So very much this is about focusing on what you can do differently. So not on what others do or don't do, and what they do that you think they shouldn't, or what they don't do that you think they should, but what can you do? What can you do differently for your benefit? Okay, because sometimes it's easy to get hung up on maybe an injustice, the sense of injustice of things that aren't right because somebody behaves in a certain way. But you don't have control over that, but you do have control over how you choose to react to it. So it's about sort of getting that distance between something that's bothering you and working out, okay, how do I respond to that in order to get myself to where I want to be? And I've talked about committing to the action. So if you commit to something, then do follow it through, because that's where the learning is. It's in the trying, it's in the experience, and that's how you develop new habits if that's what you're trying to do. So I suggested there you might want to keep a journal of what you've done with these actions, because what that will do is make it so much easier when you get to the next session and you're trying to reflect on what went well and what didn't. And you know, if there's 6 weeks or whatever in between these sessions, it's quite handy to have something that you've jotted down at the time. It doesn't need to be anything sophisticated, it's only for your use, but you might find it helpful. So before I move on to the next session, I just want to give an opportunity for any questions if you've got any, or anything that's bothering you about anything that I've said. Okay, I can't see anybody's hand, but if there is anybody, I'm sure Felix will alert me. Okay, so you also need to be realistic. So what I'm saying here is have realistic expectation whilst having ambition. So, you know, be ambitious about what you want to achieve, but don't necessarily expect to get there in one step. As I've shown in the picture, you know, sometimes when you look at people who are successful and who have made it look easy, it looks like it's just a straightforward journey. You do X, Y happens. But in reality, pretty much for everybody, it's not like that. It's a much messier journey where it's 3 steps forwards, 1 step backwards, sometimes a step to the side. And so what it really looks like is a learning process where some things work, some things don't. You regroup, you look at what you might do differently, you move on. Obviously, you need to put the effort in. So in order to get the benefits out of coaching, you have to put the effort in to both the discussion and the activities that you try. It's not a case, and there have in the past, there have been people that come onto the program that perhaps have thought, right, okay, I'm ready, do it to me, do coaching to me. But it doesn't work like that. You have to be part of that process. And so the old adage of you get out what you put in is very true in this. So if you want more out of the process, you need to put more effort in. And that's not always easy given pressures of life. I think everybody understands that there are other things going on. There are your studies, there's actually living. You know, I think that is understood that you're doing other things as well. But just make sure you plan some time for this activity to get the most out of it. And learn from what goes well as what doesn't, as I've said. So don't worry about failures, don't worry about if something fails, worry more about chances you miss if you don't even try things. Okay, so moving on to receiving feedback. Now, you may all receive feedback regularly, I don't know, in your studies, in the course of your studies, but sometimes receiving constructive feedback about how you are, sorry, just needed to turn my laptop on. I've moved it and I've plugged it in, but I haven't turned it on. You know, honest, constructive feedback can sometimes also feel uncomfortable, but it really is important to view this as information and insight. It shouldn't be taken as criticism. It might feel like it sometimes because it might be saying something didn't come across the way you intended it to. But it's not criticism, it's constructive information to help you to decide whether you want to try and change something. And it doesn't need an immediate response. So if somebody gives you some feedback, you don't have to respond immediately to what's said, because you might need a bit of time to process it and to think about whether or not you think it's right, whether or not you understand where that feedback is coming from. But ultimately, you choose what you do with feedback. So you can choose to either act on it or you can reject it. But you should always consider it because it's a really valuable source of information. And you don't get that external perspective, as I've said. So I have always view feedback as being like a gift. You'll like some that you get more than others. Some will be nice, positive, telling you something's gone well, telling you something you did really well in something and you came across really well in something, and that's always really nice to hear. And it's good sort of reassurance that you're on the right track. But some will be more practical. It'll be what you need in order to improve and in order to get better. That's not quite so nice. So I see we have a question. Now I will have a go at your name. Is it Rukia? Do you want to ask your question?
Sorry, it was an accident.
Oh no, I got all excited then. No worries. No worries. So as I'm saying, sometimes you'll like it more than others, but it's nearly always useful in some shape or form. Now you can take it away with you, that feedback, and you can unwrap it sort of, you know, when you're sitting quietly and think about, well, what did it mean? What were the component parts? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to put it on the mantelpiece or am I going to use it in the kitchen? Whatever. What am I going to do with it? But you should always be gracious in receiving that feedback. So you don't have to respond to it in terms of, I think you're absolutely right, or I don't agree with you. You don't need to respond to it then. But you should always just say, okay, thank you for that feedback. I'll take it away and think about it. And as I said, you decide whether or not you're going to use it and what value it is to you. But in this scenario, where you're getting feedback from somebody that has no vested interest, it's really worth considering well, because it's an opportunity for you to adjust on the basis of an external view, which we very rarely get. Okay, so moving on to development goals. I don't know, and I mean, I can't quite tell by asking you, I don't know whether you're practiced at setting development goals. I mean, is everybody comfortable with setting goals, or is it something you haven't done very much? I have a nod or a shake. A bit, some, maybe. Okay, so what are development goals? Well, they are intentional and specific targets that you set in conjunction with your coach, but that you set to foster growth and improvement. And they are important because they are crucial for achieving growth. They help you to focus they help you to have a sense of purpose and direction so that you can reach your full potential. And they also help you to have a structure and a plan for future development. So if you've got a goal and you achieve it, that's a really good measure that you're making progress. And you actually gather quite a lot of confidence from setting a goal and achieving it. And goal setting itself, both for yourself and for others, is a key leadership activity. So it's really worthwhile becoming comfortable with setting goals, because it's a standard tool in leadership is to work with people to set development goals for them, but also to set business goals for a department. And importantly for this programme, they are the basis for an effective coaching relationship and support to you. So if you don't have a goal, then a coach doesn't know where to focus their input and their support for you to help you, because they don't know what you want help with. So it's really important that you give enough thought to what you might want that to be. And your coach will help you to refine it. So it doesn't have to be all perfectly articulated, but you really need to know the essence of what it is that you want to do. And I think you might have thought a little bit about that in the application process. So you might already have a good idea of some areas you want to look at. Okay, so what can your goals cover? So bear in mind, we delve into a little bit of psychology here if we're not careful, but bear in mind that you've got attributes or personality traits or character traits that possibly make you who you are. And I don't think anyone is suggesting that you want to wholesale change those. And I don't think coaching could do that, if I'm honest. So, there are things about you that are more innate or have established over a much longer period of time. And then there are skills and abilities that you might want to learn, so specific things. So I have said there, things like attributes are things like any innate creativity or your sense of humour. That's probably an attribute. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you have any natural or innate talent. Whereas skills and abilities are more specific things, so things like influencing people or public speaking or self-confidence or communicating with people. There's pretty much everything. Is a skill or an ability. You have a lot of them already. You sometimes probably don't realize how many skills and abilities you already have. But skills and abilities can be learned, not without effort, but they can be learned and developed. Now, as I said, attributes are more innate or more stable, more core, shall we say. But understanding what your attributes, strengths, and weaknesses are means that you can perhaps better manage your responses to things, and you can extend or modify your natural tendencies or preferences, particularly if they're getting in the way of something you want to do or a way you want to behave. And any of these areas can feature in goals. I probably would say that I think if you're working on an attribute to either develop something new or to moderate something that you're finding unhelpful, that might take a bit more effort because you've already got a tendency that's developed that you're going to have to work with. Whereas if you're trying to develop a skill, it's more about doing something new and becoming practiced at it, learning new habits. But as I say, any of these areas can feature as goals. And just to help you when you're thinking about what your attributes might be, I have just provided this sort of character trait list, but to say that there are many more than those that are listed here, but these are quite often ones that are referenced in an employment or a career context. And they're on a spectrum. So although there's a word there, if you put the word in the middle, you can then have very or not very. And so most people are somewhere on a spectrum of all of these, and many more besides. But these are about objective behaviours. So there isn't meant to be, and there isn't a connotation of good or bad with any of these. You're either very hit or you're not very hit, and some of them might be a good thing to be, some of them might not be quite so good. But this might help you when you come to think about, well, where do you think you are on spectrums of these things? And let me move on to the next slide because I'm already talking to. So you can ask yourself a series of questions, which is, to what extent do you understand your innate traits and your tendencies and your preferences? Because it helps you to understand them. And do you think you've got strengths and weaknesses in that area? And do any of them get in the way, as I've said? And then separately, when you're looking at skills, are there things that you wish you could do, but you don't know how? And they're things like public speaking, or like maybe managing difficult people, assertive people, or getting your voice heard if you're not feeling particularly confident in something. So you can identify skills that you might want to do, and perhaps think about 3 things that you think it would help you. You want to be better at, but it would help you to be better at. And one way of doing that, if you don't like sort of just looking at attributes or just looking at developing things, is to look at somebody who you think is good at something. So either a good leader or good at something else that you wish you could do, and to just sort of step back and look at what is it that they do well and what are the component parts of that, and could you develop those skills? Would you want to develop those skills? Because this is something, your goals are something you're going to work on for the next 6-9 months, maybe. It really needs to be something you want to do, you think will help you, rather than just something you think will do, or going through the motions, because you're going to spend time on it. And the more committed you are to it and the more passionate you are about various aspects, probably the more time you will spend on it, the more you will get out of it. So those are just questions to try and help to trigger thoughts about, maybe are there things that you want to change, and are there new things that you want to do? And then to select an area that you want to work on, because you go through this process for each area you want to have a goal in, but to select an area. So let's say that you select an area of increasing your self-confidence, let's say. Then it's about looking at developing, framing it into an objective or a goal or an aim, call it what you want. You may well have come across SMART objectives. The logic behind this is very sound. Sometimes it seems to make it more of an industry than perhaps it needs to be, but being very specific about what you want to achieve makes it much easier for you to know when you've achieved it and to focus on what you need to do to get there. And so quite often in being specific, you're using action words of things that you will do in order to achieve your goal, or to things you'll be able to do. And to make sure it's measurable. So this is written for business, so some of the words don't quite work. So where it says use metrics or data targets, I mean, they might be relevant depending on what your goal is, but they might not be quite so relevant if it's about personal development. But it is about thinking about, how will you know when you have succeeded at this goal? What will success look like for you? And how would you be able to demonstrate that? So if your goal is to develop a skill, then it'll be about showing, I suppose, to yourself as much as anything else, that you have developed that skill, that you are now able to do X and Y more comfortably than you could before. That it's achievable. So this is really back to the point I made about it being realistic. So that it's within the scope of the program in this sense. You might have a goal, might be a huge goal. I want to be a good leader. Let's say that you have that as a goal, which is a very valid goal for a career, but you're not going to get there in one step. So it's really about saying, so what should I pull from that to focus on in this program? So keep it sort of possible to accomplish within the scope of the program. And it should be relevant. So it kind of makes sense to what you're trying to develop. I mean, you know, in many ways, it should be something you really care about, because that is what will help you the most. And then having a timeline attached to it so that you know when you want to do this by. So if you're really familiar with this, then I won't labour it anymore, but it's set out there. This is what makes the best goals so that you can then deliver against them. I've just used this as an example for you in terms of the SMART goal, and I deliberately didn't use one about personal development because I don't want to lead you down a particular route. It's got to be what's right for you. So just as an example, I was kind of put here, I want to eat better, improve my health, and lose weight. I mean, all of those things are true. I do want to do all of those things. I'm not quite going to do them how it says here, but so, you know, when you're specific, in general, I want to improve my health. Turning that into a SMART goal means you make it very specific about actions you're going to take in order to achieve that. And the same with it being measurable. So if I do improve my health and I eat better, then logic says I would lose weight. So this is about putting something around that to aim for. Making it attainable sometimes is about making it more of a journey, making it more of a gradual change, because you know you can't go cold turkey, although some people might prefer that. So, you know, you've got a route towards getting to where you want to be. That it's relevant to what you want to change. And then that you put a date. I mean, clearly the 31st of December 2013 is a little bit, I missed that slightly. So perhaps needs updating. But I mean, you could equally say, actually, in the measurable, that I want to get to my target weight, and in the time oriented, just put the date. So you don't have to do it quite as prescriptively as this, but it's really just to make you think that you're in enough detail. You've got specific actions. It's a sensible thing to try and do in the time that you've got. You understand what success will look like, and you've got a date that you're working to. Does that all make sense to everybody? And do you have any questions on the back of that? Okay, perfect. So I think what we're getting to then is a summary, which is, I mean, this is just repeating some of the things that I've said to you, that the coaching sessions are for your benefit. It's a great opportunity. They're not opportunities that come easily throughout your career unless your employers provide them for you. So do make the most of it. Be open to learning and change and willing to try new things, and really engage fully with those things and with your coach. And the better relationship you can build with your coach, the more you will get out of it as well. And there are no right or wrong answers. So just be yourself and have some really good conversations. And then I just put that there because I think that's so true, which is, you know, the two things in life that are in your total control. You have total control over are your attitude and your effort. If you use those two things to full effect, I don't think there's anything you can't do. Right. So now we move on to any questions. If you haven't got any, then you get to go early. So does anybody have any questions on anything that we've covered or anything that we haven't covered? That you were thinking, oh, I wish it told me how to do that, or what to expect of this. I'll maybe stop sharing, because then I'll be able to see people. Right, well, let me ask you another question then. Did that all make sense? Good, I see some nods. And what I would say to you is just take a minute or two then to just think about the quick canter that we did through that. And it's quite hard to do it. I mean, you may or may not have been involved in coaching before. You may already have been coached, in which case you've probably got better expectation. But if you haven't, it all seems a bit isolated from what's actually going to be there. But hopefully, when you get there, if you, having done your thought about your objectives, what you want out of the sessions, it will make those sessions flow a lot more smoothly and set you off for a more rapid start, a bit of a flying start, rather than spending the first session doing that initial thinking. You'll already be there, you'll already have done some of that, and you'll be able to make better use of the time that's available. So if I asked you all then, what, out of what we've covered there, what did you find most useful? You can either tell me, or you can put something in the chat, or you can stay quiet. It's entirely up to you. Is there anything that you thought, actually, yeah, I'll think about that. That might be useful.
Oh, and it seems we have a couple of questions now in the chat. I don't know if you saw them. So the first one is, will we be able to get help with setting goals with our coach? And there is another one.
Yeah, so yes, your coach will be able to help, but they won't be able to tell you what your goals are, which is why I'm really emphasizing that you really need to have thought about what you might want the goals to be before you get there. What the coach, I think, will help you to do is to refine your goal to make it fit within the time that you've got, or make it at an appropriate level. And they're not going to be able to tell you what your goal should be. Only you know that. I'll go to the, should our goals be linked to our project? Okay. So I have heard two things about the project, and Felix might be the person that can tell me on this, in that some people choose to do a project as a way of developing their skills and testing them out. But I don't know, not every year has it been mandatory to do a project, so I'm not sure whether it's mandatory to do a project.
It's not mandatory.
Okay. So whether or not you do a project really depends on, is that what you think is the best way for you to try out skills, or would you rather integrate trying out your skills into your workplace? So, or into your studies, or into your interaction with others, because it might be about influencing others, or it might be about self-confidence, so whatever it's about. So it's really, a project might be one route towards it, but there are other routes towards developing those skills. That, I think, is definitely something. If you know what skills you want to produce, that is definitely something that a discussion with your coach would help with. But I think with your goals, as you're saying, just Sarah, you're saying, I don't know where to start with them. So in terms of the goals, really, I think you start with, what would you like to be able to do? Let's imagine, what would you like to be able to do in your career? Because we are talking leadership here, really. Or what skills would you like to have that you don't feel confident in now? So it could be enhancing a skill that you've already got, but you feel it's a bit fledgling skill, shall I say, and you want to feel more confident and more robust in that skill. Or it might be a skill or an attribute that you don't think you have and that you really think you benefit from developing. So it comes to, what do you feel would help you to operate in a work environment or in an education environment? What do you think would help you to operate or interact with others? And then to work out from there what areas might be good for a goal for you, and then to take those areas and talk to your coach about those areas in terms of fleshing those up into a fully formed objective. Does that help? Well, anything else? It's the sort of thing that the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with doing it. As with many things, that the first time you try and do it, it can seem a little daunting. And I think some of that is because we all tend to think that there's a right answer as well. And there isn't. It's very much what's right for you and what will help you. So, okay, how long are the sessions with the coach? So that is something that is kind of dependent on the relationship that you build with your coach, but generally you're looking at about an hour. And actually, you don't really want it to be much longer than that because it can be quite tiring, particularly if you feel that you're doing most of the talking, which a good coaching session should be, you doing more of the talking. So.
Yeah, there's another question.
Yeah, okay. So if you're not doing a project, how would I recommend using the coaching sessions? Okay, so that's still looking at what goals you want to have, so what you want to develop and what skills or what attributes or what personal development you want to do. So to discuss that with your coach, and in that you will look at, well, what are the ways you might try that out? So for previous years, for example, sometimes some students have said they don't feel very confident and they want to develop self-confidence. So there are lots of ways that you can do that. You don't need to do a project to develop self-confidence. It's about changing your mindset, I suppose, and not being afraid to try things. And so you can set yourself with your goal sort of activities to do which will grow your confidence. And that's something that happens quite a lot. It's quite, I mean, I won't say common, but quite a few people have used self-confidence as a goal. Although I think you probably develop self-confidence just by going through a coaching process, developing other skills. Confidence tends to come with it. So you get one for free there if you develop other skills and you get confidence of developing those other skills. So the coaching sessions are very much about you, what you want to achieve. You don't need a project. 3 hours feels like not enough time. Yes, that is, I guess, why I'm saying you really need to think about it before you go in, and then you need to reflect on it when you come out. I think you're absolutely right there. 3 hours, it's over a course of time. So not all the development happens in the coaching session. You know, the coaching session is about pulling strands together, pulling themes out, helping you to look at things with a critical eye, helping you to learn from things that you've tried. But a lot of the work is done in between the sessions where you go and try new things, where you work on whatever you've agreed as being the good things to do. So it's not about all the development happening in 3 hours. And an hour's coaching conversation can make a lot of difference. I mean, in the past, I have done 3-minute coaching sessions on one issue, but a 3-minute coaching session, which is really just taking somebody through something that is bothering them and helping them decide how they feel they want to address it. I'm not recommending that. I don't think 3 minutes is long enough, but I'm just saying an hour, you can get through quite a lot in an hour. The more prepared you are, the more you will get through in your hour. And when you talk about in terms of preparedness, there is no substitute for thinking. There is that thinking time about any particular areas you think you would find it helpful to discuss with your coach. So if it's something around, let's say getting your voice heard, especially when you're dealing with very assertive people, let's say, then, you know, if you think about, well, what is the actual issue there, and have you got examples of where you have found that difficult? Because if you go into the session armed with those, you're already sort of fast tracking through to so how might I address that? All right, so you're right, preparedness, I think, is key in that. I think you're absolutely right. But the important thing is to engage with the sessions, engage with the coach, and do your thinking in between. It's not something that just happens by turning up. It's another piece of work. So I'm sorry if that's bad news for some of you, because I might already have a lot of things going on, which I absolutely get. But it is. But I have to say, having been coached myself and having coached a lot of different people with different objectives, it's very rewarding. I learned a lot through my coaching sessions. It's why I became a coach. I'd say it was fundamental, really, in terms of helping you to look at things differently, and also in terms of coming on a journey, going on a journey, and as a coach, you're going on a journey with somebody, but even just going on that journey and knowing that you can learn, develop, and do things that you didn't think you could at the start of the journey is very empowering, and does build that confidence. And hopefully then that's something else that you've got in your toolkit for when you're in an employment situation or a leadership situation and you need to sort of pull that experience out and share it with others. Okay.
Thank you so much, Alison. There is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it is a fantastic opportunity, I think, and I really hope that you all get a lot out of your coaching journey and out of the student leadership program itself, and that you enjoy it, and hopefully that it sets you up for where you want to be for an enjoyable, long and successful career. So thank you everybody for all your attention.